Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chai with Startup CEOs. Today, I am joined by the amazing Kim Kaplan. She's the founder and CEO of Snack App, where video meets dating. And, I am so excited for this episode. I've been, sort of nagging Kim about sort of the kind of beverage that she needs to have on as well. Because last time when I recorded the episode, everyone was just like, Joel, where's the chai? You forgot the chai, and your show is called Chai with Startup CEOs. So today, I've got mine. Kim, have you got yours on you? All right.
It's early in the morning here. It's water, actually.
Yeah. Well. I mean, it's time for brunch almost, like a boozy brunch on a Tuesday afternoon, don't be cool. Yeah.
Not too much to do for the rest of my day, but it's nice to
Yeah. Fair enough. So just to give you a bit of context, everyone, Kim grew Plenty of Fish, which is one of the biggest sort of dating apps acquired by Match Group, essentially, for about $575 million. And she grew that user base from about 1 million to about 4 million users, and then took the revenue up from 10 million to about 100 million. So, just like a walk in the park, like very easy stuff that Kim does on a daily basis. And now she's started her very own sort of video meets dating kind of company. So Kim, I'm gonna let you tell us all about Snack App, what we should know about it, what should Gen Z expect to change sort of in the dating world with the introduction of Snack App. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Joel. Snack. So Snack is a video first dating app, very much like TikTok kind of meets dating. And when I left Plenty of Fish, had no intention of getting back into the dating world. If you had asked me that moment in time, I probably would have said, hell no. It is a really, really difficult industry, and I know how difficult it is to break into. But one day I was using TikTok, and I came across this woman's video, and she was saying, what's your name, what's your age, what's your sign, where you're from? Mm-hmm. And I paused, and I remember it clear as day. I realized that she was trying to use TikTok to date. And when I looked at that song, there's over 130,000 videos to that one song, and she had the hashtag single in her description. Yeah. And so I looked at the hashtag single, and there was over 13 billion views of hashtag single at that moment. Amazing. And I just had this realization, this aha moment of, wow, like people are trying to use TikTok to date, but it's fundamentally not built for dating. If you think about, you don't know someone's location, you don't know whether or not they're single, you don't know where they're, what they're seeking, and it's one of those things, or their age even, and it's one of those things where you can see people who are trying to do it, and I have heard of some successes that have resulted from TikTok videos, but it just kind of showed me that video was now kind of at the forefront, and what TikTok did, which is what was stopping video from taking off previously, is it taught people how to create really compelling 15 and 30-second videos of themselves. And up until that moment in time, none of us knew how to get in front of a camera and very easily take a video that you'd be proud to share on a dating profile or share publicly. And so that was kind of the rise of TikTok, the tools that TikTok provided in terms of video editing, just the kind of the gamification and the fun that associated with that. Just made now the right time for video first dating app. And that's where Snack was.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if you think about it, sort of like when I walk up to a sort of investor VC kind of like, they're asking me, are you facing this problem? So Kim, obviously, you get the question as this is a Gen Z app kind of a thing. How does it affect you as a person kind of thing? Or who did you speak to first to you had the TikTok videos sort of validating it for you. But who were the kind of like Gen Z people that you ended up speaking to in those first few sort of days and months kind of?
Sure. So I'm not Gen Z. I understand dating. I understand how to build the framework of a dating app. So immediately when I thought about creating this app, I thought, okay, well, given my background, I know I can build the basics of what this app needs to be. But if I'm building it for Gen Z, I need to involve them in the process. So I reached out to a bunch of different groups, everything from the Gen Z Mafia to a couple other Gen Z VCs to my siblings to you name it. I kind of got information from a number of different people and different groups from different walks of life to try to understand, okay, one, how are they currently dating? And when I spoke to a lot of Gen Zs, they say they use Tinder or they use Bumble because there's not really a better option. But as soon as they match, they move over to Snap and Instagram. And the reason they're doing that is to kind of have these kind of covert flirtations. That was their words. They do these kind of covert flirtations with one another. And what that taught me, and it was a really interesting insight, is that the way that Bumble and Tinder work is you match and then you're thrown over to a different UX and you're saying, okay, now go figure out how to message each other over there. And it's this high pressure moment of, so do we go on a date? Do we go for chai? Do we go for a glass of wine? Do we go for a walk? And what I realized is they were then moving over to Snap or Instagram so that they could engage in each other's content post-match. Because there wasn't that pressure of having to go on that date immediately. So we built Snap with that in mind. So once you've matched with somebody, similar to Tinder and Bumble, you both have to like each other's videos. Then your videos would keep showing up in my feed. So we've matched, you upload a video of your dog, I see that video. And instead of a like button, there's now a DM box. So I can DM you and be like, that's such a cute dog. What type of dog is it? And that's something that it's more contextual. It's more interesting way of starting a conversation. It's more natural. We're not
otherwise you have
someone in a park and say, hey, what type of dog is that? Versus walking up to them and like, so you want to go on a date?
It's really not like a Joey Tribbiani kind of time where you just go like, how you doing? And then like, everything just works out like, it's all fine. But then, like, how do you see sort of the trends in sort of like dating patterns sort of changing? You mentioned that essentially you're following the person and like the kind of content that they're putting out constantly after that. So that implies to me that a person wants, like you said, more context around sort of what this person is all about. It's not just about seeing a picture and going like, oh wow, like, they look so great, like let me just swipe and like go out with them or whatever. But rather you want to know what they're all about. So could you tell me about sort of the patterns that you're seeing in Gen Z dating right now? What's changing?
Well, I think when you think about dating apps, they, for the last 20 years, have been the same. They've been this static version of yourself. You upload your 5 best pictures, you write this curated paragraph about yourself, and you don't change it. So there's no reason to go back and keep looking at that profile. You look at it once and you got it. Whereas with social, what we're doing now is we're continually updating things about our lives. We're posting regularly. We're sharing what we did on the weekend. We're sharing what we did last night. We're sharing that awesome meal we cooked. And why shouldn't that exist in dating? And why shouldn't we share all the parts of ourselves that are more authentic, more real, more natural than this very specific version? And if you think about your 5 best images of yourself, they're probably from the last 5 years. So you're getting like these old photos, you're getting these very curated photos or Photoshop photos. And with video, these videos didn't exist 3 years ago. So they're all new, they're all fresh. And if we're taking the mentality of keep updating it, just kind of be in your natural self, then you're going to show up who you are more authentically, which I think is from a very important, especially from a dating perspective.
Right. And let's say I was a 22-year-old Kim Kaplan. What would I be sort of posting on my Snack account?
Honestly, the best thing you can do is providing somebody else the jumping off point to start that conversation with you.
Got it.
So if it's like, hey, check out the meal I cooked last night, someone can engage with that. Or here's my puppy. Or one example I heard, which I loved, is someone said that they would stare right into the camera and they'd have some bread and a cheese and a tomato, and they'd be slicing a tomato and say, what do you want on your sandwich?
Oh,
isn't that good?
That's nice. Yeah.
Just something
super creative.
So easily gets the other person to be like, oh, I'd like turkey. I would like something totally random on it. And it starts the conversation off. So anything, like dating is tough. So anything you can do, and it's not necessarily about putting yourself out there, but about jobs that you have to do, but it's about coming up with the content that allows somebody else to very easily engage with it. Because then that's going to get you more interest.
Right. And do users get anything other than sort of like the match that they make essentially? Because obviously they're creating content as well. Is it like an Instagram where you sort of grow your following to a certain extent and then like you get people pay you money to sort of advertise or whatever it is. So maybe the bread that I'm putting out is like bread by a particular company or whatever. You want to have a turkey ham sandwich with me, like that was made by X, like Pillsbury, I don't know. So is that an option for creators?
Not at the moment, no. Never say never, but I think there is a divide between dating and social. And it's not necessarily about getting more followers. It's about meeting the person that's right for you. And if you leave because you've met someone, awesome. We don't want you staying on the app just because you want to keep getting more people to like you. I think that's that's the opposite of what a dating app is really meant to do. But I mean, if your person is, you want to meet someone for a night, you want to meet someone for a month, you want to meet someone for a lifetime, those options are all available to you. But the goal is, how do we help you connect with somebody? How do we help you meet? And how do we help you get offline?
Right. Amazing. That sounds great. And, obviously you've raised a $3.5 million pre-seed round, which is like by far one of the largest pre-seed rounds I've ever heard of. So tell us about, what goes into that kind of a process, and, what are the kind of challenges that you faced in raising the pre-seed? For context, I'm sort of building my own crypto sort of startup right now, and I'm in the process of like accelerators and pre-seed rounds and things like that. But I'm almost like 99% sure I won't raise the $3.5 million one.
Don't
so tell me about.
Never say never. Trust me. It's even like I raised that in September of last year, and it's a much frothier market now than it was even in September. So definitely don't cut yourself down and sell yourself short. But the biggest pieces of advice I've given, and I'd never fundraised before. I never had. I didn't have relationships with VCs. I did in Canada, but not in the US. And the advice I would give is to run a really good process. I think too many people focus on the pitch and spend all their time on that deck and making it perfect. And what I did, obviously spent the time on the deck, but I spent more time figuring out who is it that I want to actually pitch to. Finding the relevant funds, and then finding the relevant partner or person or associate inside of the fund that is going to be my champion. And then what I did was find, who do I know that's connected to that person? And so I go through LinkedIn, said, who do I know that knows so-and-so? And when I could find that connection, I would reach out to my friend and say, hey, how well do you know this person? Like, would you be open to making an introduction? And here's what I'm doing. And some of those conversations led to people like, oh, you're building that? I want to invest. You're like, okay, that's great. Would love to have you on board, but you make this intro essentially. And I had all the intros made in 1 week. So I started my pitching and set up all my first meetings that next week. And then it kind of started that other people hear about you, hear that you're pitching, they reach out. You start having second meetings, third meetings, and what it resulted in was it was a 3-week process, and ended up with multiple term sheets at the end of the 3 weeks. But it was important to bring everyone along at the same time. So if new people were interested in investing, I would be very open with them and say, look, like, you're coming in late. I've been talking to a couple of other funds for a few weeks. We are a couple meetings in. If you're interested, happy to bring you in, but you're going to have to speed it up. And what that does is it kind of, the people that aren't that interested drop off, which is fine, because then that's your time you're saving. And the people that are interested, make sure that they speed it up and they have those meetings with you. So you actually know who is going to kind of step up and be a part of it. And pitching through Zoom, I actually think was a really big benefit. You get to sit, like I joke, I'm like, I was sitting in my own den. I didn't have to walk into these giant boardrooms in the valley where you're in their domain. I got to sit somewhere I was the most comfortable, and I picked the spot that I was most comfortable. And when I was pitching, I never actually went through my deck. I spoke to it because I knew it so well, and most founders would know their decks extremely well, that you don't need it in front of you. And when you think about a computer screen, there's only so much real estate in which someone's going to look. So they're either
Right.
going to be talking to you and engaging with you and building a rapport and a relationship with you, or they're going to be staring at your deck.
Yeah.
And to me, it was
That's
more
so
important to have that conversation and involve them one-on-one than have them staring at a deck and have me go through each slide.
Yeah, that's so true. And like, I think one of my biggest takeaways from that is like, when you're pitching at sort of the crowds that are meant for you, obviously you're going to be hearing a lot of no's, a lot of like, oh yeah, that might not work, and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's often discouraging. But I think it's on the founders to sort of, know what direction to pitch at in the first place. And I think that's what we can take away from Kim here is just that, if you're able to narrow that down in the very beginning, then you avoid a lot of like time waste on things like this. So yeah, definitely. And when you think about social media ads and just like dating apps as well, you think about retention, you think about monthly active users, daily active users, all of those kind of things. I'm building sort of like in the tokenized social media space, and I have to think actively about those too. So perhaps it's a bit of a selfish question and not for all of our viewers, but I get only one shot with Kim, so I'm going to ask that anyways. So Kim, what do you think is like the best practices for creating like sort of feedback loops in that sense and sort of ensuring that you're maintaining it, or like let's say it's dipping at some point and then you need to sort of shoot that up? How do you trigger those kind of things?
There's no magic bullet. It's figure out which metric really matters. There typically is only a couple of metrics that ultimately are going to fundamentally move the needle for you. And when you can determine what those are, then all you do is be laser focused on trying different things to improve those numbers. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's focusing on increasing those numbers and making them better. And if you lose people, that's okay. You also have to pay attention to like, did you get a source of traffic that might be a low intent source of traffic? So yes, you might see low retention from certain cohorts, but if that's not who your core audience is, that's also okay. You learn from that. You learn that, you know what, like I did this thing on Discord and all the traffic that came through was really low retention. That shows you that that's probably not the best channel to be focusing on. So it's just making sure that you're paying attention to customers, where they're coming from, what their behavior is like, and what are the things that they're doing at D1, D2, D3, D4 that increase retention. So those that are really active, what are the things that are getting them to become active? And then how do you try to get other people to take those actions?
Right. And I think sort of every time sort of providing, you're probably thinking about how most to sort of add value to each particular user at different stages. So the way we were thinking about it was how value versus volume fares in the context of the first 100 users, the first 1,000 users, and the first 10,000. And it's totally different. Like, and you'd have to spend whatever, like for us, at least it was sort of like a little bit of grant money, whatever that we want, that was sort of spending to, facilitate conversations with people or create more interest for them, whatever it is, just so that they stay on the platform, because there's so many other social media platforms that are sticky and it's very hard to, drag those users out from there. On the context of sort of MVPs, I would sort of ask you, I guess people always say, oh, your MVP can be super bare bones and like, it can be very scrappy, all of those kind of things. How much do you think that applies to your startup and like when you built your MVP essentially? Because Gen Z, they like things that look good. They like things that are easy to use in terms of applications and stuff. So how did you go about that entire process? What was needed for your MVP?
I very much am of the mentality of launch something, get it out there, see how people use it, because how you think people are going to use it often is different from how they actually do. And if you spend too much time polishing something and making it look pixel perfect and you launch it, you could be 2-3 months behind learning that thing you were polishing actually doesn't get used. And that feature you thought was going to be the game changer ends up not being anything special. So when we launched Snack, you couldn't even edit a video on the app. All you could do was upload your videos. So we literally had a button that said upload your TikToks, because we didn't have, we hadn't had the time to build that functionality. Now we knew it was going to come, but we wanted to get the app live. We wanted to see what things are important, what have we learned as a result of putting it live, And then that helps us focus on where we need to spend our time and our energy.
Right. And you've been very sort of focused on saying we, and it's something that I picked up over the course of like this entire interview. You're so sort of focused on saying, sort of pushing your team forward, I guess, and sort of plugging them quite a bit. So tell me about the first 5 people you hired for Snack, and who were they? What did you look for them on the technical side and on the behavioral side?
So our team is now 15, which is amazing. We doubled in the last 2 months, went from 7 to 15. So the first, I would say 7 hires, because they all hired them around the same time. But the first 2 was my head of engineering and my head of design. And I got introduced to mutual friends to my head of engineering who'd worked with them previously. And him and I spoke for a number of months prior to saying like, okay, yeah, like, let's do this. And I was also raising during COVID, and I told the team, I don't want you to leave your full-time roles until we actually have the money in the bank. So I was raising the round saying, here's who I believe is going to join the team, but until the money's there, they're not going to leave their full-time roles. And so the money came to the bank in October, and everyone joined in November. Head of design was getting their help kind of on the side with my deck, and coming up with some ideas and like what the screens would be. And we'd actually worked together previously at Plenty of Fish. So I knew who he was, I knew his work style, and it was great. So as soon as, and I actually reached out, I was like, do you know anyone who might be interested in a full-time role? And he kind of put his hand up and said, I would. So it was great timing. And then everyone else, I think it was like at the start, you need people who are going to be scrappy. You need people who are going to kind of give their all. You need people that, I have a very, I would say, specific hiring process that I use that I actually learned through Match Group. And I introduced it to a number of startups that I advised after I left Plenty of Fish and before I started Snack. And it really is everything from that initial screen and the questions that I know I want to ask to from screen through to a technical interview, and do they know that their technical chops to do the job? And then the last one is more of that cultural fit and making sure that there's someone that you're going to want to work with and be in the trenches with. And the one thing I always tell founders is every founder's like excited to grow, and they want to grow the team, they want to grow the company, and they're like, I want to hire that next step, I want to reach that next round. And it's really enjoy the moments that you're in, because you never get them back. Like relish in these moments, because I even think back to when we were 7 people and the culture and the conversations we were able to have. Now we're 15 and it's slightly more challenging. You have to introduce more processes. You have to have more communication. And my favorite time at Plenty of Fish was when we were 12 people. And I remember those moments so fondly. So I'm really trying to take in these moments now, and I love the team we have, and everyone is so amazing. And I want to make sure we're taking that in, because I suspect very quickly we'll be 30 and then we'll be 60, and you never get to take a step back and say, okay, how do we go back to that moment we were 15 people? Because team dynamics and team size does get more, it just becomes different in terms of how you manage it and the processes and the layers and the flatness of an organization. So it's just cherish the moments you're in, and don't be, excited to grow and excited to expand, but don't lose sight of the fact that you're in a really special place right now, and you'll never be able to take that step back. Hopefully nobody has to downsize. Hopefully it's just an upward trajectory.
Yeah, of course. And I think you mentioned communication in that bit. I think I'm a very strong propagator of like over communication, just because I think when you're building a startup and you're super early, and you don't hear from like your team members or whatever on a given few days or on a given day or whatever it is, and I feel like it's so much better to know that, okay, I've got something going on, but I'll sort of like work on this at this time. I would much rather hear that than hear nothing and then go like, here's what I was supposed to do, by the way. So how do you think over communication sort of plays a role in sort of the earliest of days, like your first 7 employees?
I think, it depends whether or not you're in an office, you're on Zoom. There's so many different challenges and opportunities with both. My feedback is just you have to, like, you think you've communicated something enough, communicate it again. We have an all hands every Monday morning with the entire team. And at the end, it's basically an AMA. Ask me anything. And you can ask anyone in the organization anything. And just providing the forum and the opportunities for people to get their questions out there. And if one person has that question, chances are somebody else does. They just might be too shy to come forward with it. So it's really important to have that transparency and openness amongst the team. It's
sure. So,
and then I try to still do one-on-ones with everyone. At least I try once a month. It ends up probably being once every 2 months with each person in the organization. So, because it does take time, especially now that we're 15. When we were 7, it was easier, but now that we're 15, it's harder.
Yeah, and people often say, like, I think some tend to say that your startup should be treated like a family. The others are like more on the sports team kind of side, like treat your startup like a sports team. Where do you fall in that sort of like spectrum?
I don't know. I think a lot of sports teams are also like family. So, I probably don't have enough experience with sports teams to really know.
Fair enough. I think that the notion is more that
sporty, but
no. The notion is just that you position the best people for the best roles, kind of like that. That's the only analogy with sports. But yeah,
I think it's really about I try to give our leads responsibility over their teams, and really that's their teams. And I'm there, and I'm always going to have one-on-ones with them and communicate with them and talk to them, because I think it's important that they have that opportunity to talk to anybody in the organization. And I want to make sure I'm available and they don't feel like I'm sitting up on a pedestal somewhere, because I'm not. We're all in the trenches together. But I also want to make sure that their core relationship and their core, I would say, work management comes from who's leading them. And each leader has a different way of engaging with their teams. So when you were saying that family versus sports team moment, it was interesting, because I'm like, I feel like the people that I communicate mostly with is the leadership team. And to me, they kind of feel like family. And maybe that's because I know them a little bit better than I do everyone else in the organization, because we talk multiple times a week. But at the same time, there's also some of the team members, especially the ones that have been there from day one, where I do feel really closely to. And there's also, there's somebody else on the team that recently joined that was also Plenty of Fish, and I worked closely with for a couple of years. So I also feel closely with that person. It's a weird dynamic. I can't say that some people are family, some people aren't, and some people are sport. Like, it's all, maybe some are cousins and other people are siblings. I don't know.
Like distant relatives who you don't necessarily know. No, that's fair. And obviously going back to Plenty of Fish, it's come up quite a bit. And you were employee number 3 at Plenty of Fish, which, again, to repeat, exited for over $500 million, right?
In 2015, which when you think about valuations in 2015 versus 2021, like it was, up until this year, we were still the 4th or 5th largest exit in Canada.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. So tell us about, when you are employee number 3 at a startup, what's like the best things that you can potentially do, I guess, to make the most use of your time? Because obviously you're taking on a lot of risk, and potentially you're not at the sort of founder level of equity or whatever it is. So how can you best use that time being an early employee at a startup?
So when I joined Plenty of Fish was in 2008, 2009. And tech probably wasn't as well known as it is now or established. And it really was just all hands on deck. You did whatever was asked of you. And I remember talking to Marcus, who's the founder at a number of years back, and he basically said, I knew that I could, he said, you said yes to everything. Whenever I had something, I would just give it to you and you'd figure it out. And if you didn't know what you're doing, you'd either come and ask me a question, or you'd find somebody. I would stalk people on LinkedIn. And I would find somebody and ask them the question, because I knew that they'd be the expert in that field. So I was never afraid to ask for help, but it didn't always have to come from necessarily internal people. I could ask for help by seeking out information from others. And I think that is probably one of my superpowers, is that I'm okay with knowing what I don't know and figuring out who it is that can best answer that question. but I just figured it out. I always said yes, was always up for the challenge. And because of that, I got exposed to so many different areas of the business and had the opportunity to take all of these pieces on and learn a ton through that. Even after the Match Group acquisition, had the opportunity to learn a lot. I'd never done, we went public shortly after we got acquired. So the rigor of budgeting and forecasting that you have to go through as a result of being a public entity is like nothing you've ever seen. But I wanted that exposure, so I asked for it. And I got to see firsthand what happens in that type of an environment. And it was fascinating. And it very much shaped and helped me grow because I never had that. So it's always about like learning. How do you keep growing? Learning.
Right, and now you know exactly how to take Snack public when the time comes. Because we know all of the forecasting, all of the budgeting, it's ready to go. It's just a matter of matter of the users and time. I'm so excited for Snack and sort of what are sort of immediate kind of future plans that you have for Snack? And is there something exciting that we should all be sort of waiting for and that you'd like to share with us as a Try with Startup CEOs exclusive?
I think the biggest thing we're working on right now is how do we make it easier for people to know what to create from a video perspective? So TikTok has all these tools and all these functionalities and they kind of make it easy. How do we put our own spin on that and kind of that dating spin for provide something similar to TikTok so that you don't have to just rely on uploading your TikToks and you come onto the app and you're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. And you don't have to pause and say, oh, what would I upload? Because dating is hard. We all know dating is hard. It takes work. So if we can remove, I think the two biggest barriers to dating is what do I put on my profile? How do I create a good video? And then what do I say to someone that I'm interested in? And I'm hoping we've solved for the what do I say to someone with our kind of engaging with content. So our next problem to solve is how do we make it so easy that you jump on there and you're like, oh, I know exactly what type of video to create on Snap. Or that's so easy, like I spin around in my chair at my desk and that's my video of me for Snack. And that's our next goal.
Right. That's amazing. I think simplifying the sort of process, which already is extremely hard, I guess, for a lot of people coming from various cultures and backgrounds, especially, I think, to make it sort of like a universal process on creating prompts and things like that, to just go ahead and like reach out to someone. I think that's amazing. So I can't wait to see the future for Snack. And I'm so glad I caught you on so early. But then
talking about LinkedIn stalking? No.
Oh man, LinkedIn is like, exactly. LinkedIn is my favorite place to be, even though it's not necessarily, I guess not everyone likes it. And it's often becoming this sort of congratulatory kind of platform. Like, I'm delighted to announce this and that and this. But like, at the end of the day, I think it was so crazy for me to see Snack, just as context for everyone on how I was able to reach out to Kim. Tips on cold messaging, by the way. I think I genuinely sort of liked what Snack was doing, and I was like going through their TikTok or something like that, and I was like, Kim, why don't you try something like this? Or I don't know if it actually went into play or whatever, but I think to actually reach out to founders and to people that inspire you, it's more about your interest in them as opposed to that anything else, I would say. And I think it shows when you're not genuinely interested in what someone is doing. So I was so lucky
to everyone listening, reach out to people. I think I mentioned that I did that early on. I would cold reach out to tons of people, and you'd be really surprised at how often they're willing to say yes. Because people, for the most part, genuinely want to help others, especially if your ask is very specific. If you say, hey, can I just have a phone call? That's a lot more challenging than, hey, I'd like to have a phone call because I'd like to ask you about X, Y, and Z. That person can look at it and be like, yeah, I can help you with that. Or they're like, no, it doesn't quite make sense for me. But you'd be surprised. Even to this day, I still cold outreach to lots of people.
Amazing. I guess we shouldn't just self-reject ourselves. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like, if we think it's going to be a no, then it doesn't even have a shot at being a yes, I guess. And thank you, Kim, for taking the time. I really appreciate it, out of your busy schedule to sort of come and talk to us. I think that's all we have time for. But thank you so much, Kim. And to everyone watching, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and stay
give us
tuned for
5
a lot more
stars.
chats.
Rate us 5
Yeah.
stars. And thank you for having me. It's been
Drop that
a
in the
pleasure.
comment. Yeah, thank you so much, Kim.